one and only Pinocchio.
What a build-up.
Pinocchio Unstrung is the latest movie in the one and only Twisted Childhood universe, and follows a young boy named James who tragically lost both his parents and his best friend. So his grandfather Geppetto introduces him to Pinocchio, a talking puppet who he befriends. But when James cements his friendship with the puppet, Pinocchio sets out on a mission to prevent bad things from happening to James, which includes brutally killing people who may have caused harm to James in the past. So I had the opportunity to see this movie at a sold-out screening at the Universal City Walk AMC, and the turnout was definitely large, but everyone was totally into this movie, which afterwards was followed up with a Q&A with some of the crew who worked on Pinocchio Unstrung, and I even had the opportunity to meet Reese Frake Waterfield and Scott Chambers after the screening, which is so surreal to me. The first Twisted Childhood Universe video I ever made on this channel was me reacting to the Pinocchio animatronic, and since then I've gone on to make many more TCU related videos, all leading up to now where I get to meet the masters behind these movies. That is one hell of a full circle moment. Now, with that all being said, does Pinocchio Unstrung live up to my expectations? Well, it's about time we find out the truth. And don't worry, my nose won't grow if I say any lies about this movie. Oh, Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, and if you do all of that, then you are officially groovy. It goes without saying that the Twisted Childhood universe has had an absolutely interesting lineup over the last few years now. But I gotta say, after 5 movies in now, I think they finally found their footing, because Pinocchio Unstrung is a gory good time that finally did something I've been wanting the franchise to do from the very beginning, which is create a blend of horror and comedy. While it still retains the dark tone that all the other TCU movies have, this movie is also surprisingly very funny. It has a lot of quippy one-liners and jokes that actually worked very well for me, and it feels like the first TCU movie to be kinda self-aware of the source material it's based on. A lot of that humor comes from Pinocchio himself. With him being rather naive, they take advantage of that to construct some funny one-liners for him. But we also do get some good humor out of Cricket as well, played here by Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund. And the casting of Cricket is a prime example of how far this franchise has come over the last few years. We went from seeing killers wearing cheap rubber masks to casting horror icons, and Englund gives a witty performance as Cricket, with it feeling like a blend of Jiminy Cricket from the classic Disney Pinocchio as well as Freddy Krueger, because of course. But Robert Englund is not the only horror legend to appear in this movie, as we also have Richard Brake as Geppetto. Brake, known for playing some pretty iconic villains like the ones in Batman Begins, Game of Thrones, and some of Rob Zombie's movies. Oh, and I gotta mention Last Stop in Yuma County. An underrated gem right there. And I think what they do with Geppetto in this movie is really fascinating. They expand more on his backstory other than being the grandfather in this story, and his past may not be what you'd expect it to be. And Brake delivers another intense performance to add to his filmography, and once again, he kicks ass here. In fact, though I did mention that this film is by far the funniest entry in the Twisted Childhood universe, it's still not afraid to get pretty sinister at times. There's a scene involving a young boy in this movie that's definitely gonna shock a lot of audience members, so heads up if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. But as with all the other Twisted Childhood universe movies, the film goes all out with the practical effects here. As we all know from the original source material, Pinocchio wants to become a real boy, but here, in order to do that, he decides to take other people's skin, teeth, hair, and all sorts of things, which results in some absolutely gnarly kills. This film definitely has some of the most creative and graphic kills in the franchise so far, with one in particular that may be an all-timer, and Pinocchio himself is a full-fledged animatronic, which is so cool to see, especially in this kind of movie. I love how flexible his movements are, and the actual puppeteering that went into this movie looks really great. You gotta hand it to Todd Masters and his team over at Masters Effects, who also gave us the effects in Slither, Final Destination Bloodlines, and the Child's Play remake from 2019, which actually brings me nicely over to the next thing I want to talk about. As I'm sure many of you know, the Twisted Childhood universe has been known to take inspiration from other horror movies and incorporate them into their final products, and here it's no no exception. The relationship between Pinocchio and our main protagonist James is very much like Andy and Chucky's in the 2019 remake, but you also get homages to other classic horror movies in this film as well, and I will say this time around they were actually pretty well done. There's a scene that takes place in a pool, and they do an homage to Jaws, and it got a legit laugh out of me, so I have to applaud them for that one. Oh, and speaking of other movies, something else I really appreciated about Pinocchio is how it made little tie-ins to other movies in the franchise. Since this movie pretty much takes place in the same region as the previous installments, we get a couple of cameos from some of the other characters. For instance, James has to go to the hospital at one point, and the nurse assisting him is none other than Christopher Robin from Blood and Honey. It's some nice little Easter eggs for the fans, but it also acts as a setup for the upcoming Pooniverse Monsters Assemble. And if you're new to my channel and are unfamiliar with this franchise, yes, this is an actual movie in development set to release next year. Marvel, you got some competition for real. So, while there's plenty to enjoy in Pinocchio Unstrung, I feel like some parts could have used some slight improvements, one of which being the introduction of Cricket. He just kind of randomly shows up about halfway through the movie after being sent to assist Pinocchio in killing his victims, but they don't really go in depth as to how he got there in the first place. Like, where did the Cricket come from? Why is he sent to help kill these people? I do feel like it is necessary for Cricket to show up in the film since he's such an essential character in the original source material, but it's weird how he's just abruptly introduced into the narrative. I also do wish they explored more of the idea of Pinocchio's nose growing when he lies. I mean, don't get me wrong, we do still get to see his nose get bigger, but I feel like there was a really great opportunity for him to do more with that aside from a couple of stabbings here and there. But in the end, I found Pinocchio Unstrung to be a very impressive outing from the Twisted Childhood universe. It's got impressive effects between the animatronics and the gore, a really solid blend of horror and comedy that I hope to see more of in this franchise, and another unique take on the classic source material that culminates with some very good surprises towards the end. While fans of the TCU are definitely gonna love this movie, I feel like even those who watch stuff outside the genre will find things to enjoy in this movie. Oh, and be sure to stick around during the end credits because there's some extra cool stuff to see during then. So yeah, Pinocchio Unstrung is a solid horror take on the iconic wooden boy. But the real question is this the best movie in the Twisted Childhood universe? Well, be sure to stay tuned for next week when I rank all 5 of the Twisted Childhood universe movies. And you can see where I rank not only Pinocchio Unstrung, but every other movie in the franchise as well. Also, full disclosure, if you watched my Evil Dead Burn review, you'll remember that I said I was gonna do an Evil Dead ranking right after. But I'm not gonna lie, I kinda forgot to make that video, so I apologize for not being able to release that video. But fear not, I do promise to release my Evil Dead ranking sometime this year, and you can quote me on that. So, with that being said, let me know if you saw Pinocchio Unstrung and what you thought of it. I'd be very curious to see your takes on this movie for sure. But anyways, that's about it for today. See ya.